Coming up, how concerning is Deonte Banks at this point of the season for the New York Football Giants? Will they try to make any adjustments over the back half of this year to determine if they in fact have a number one corner? We dive in next. Yes, my friends, it's OGP, the One Giant Podcast, where you know that we are your host over here, Adam Armich, over there, Andrew Makowitz. We're healthy, wealthy, and wise, and we are talking about a player by the name of Deonte Banks. What do we expect for this player when we look at some key stats, Andy? That sounds something a little bit like the New York Football Giants have had a number one alleged cornerback playing to a 131.4 passer rating against over the course of this season in coverage. Out of 81 cornerbacks that have been targeted 18 plus times, that ranks 80th. Lack of hustle and heart is always hard to watch. That comes care of one David Siverstein. So we appreciate him for giving those stats, obviously, on that side of it. But where are we? Where do we live with Deonte Banks, who I came in, we both came in the offseason and said, how dare the NFL not respect Deonte Banks? Well, guess what? 7 weeks later, it looks like maybe they shouldn't have been.
So there's a lot to unpack here, Adam. I don't want to be, again, it's very difficult to not be a prisoner of the moment when you watch him make what can only be a business decision and pull up in the middle of the game against Jalen Hurts when he was like, I kind of could have made the tackle, but maybe I didn't. It would have been a lot of effort if I had to do it. You're like, what planet are we on? You're playing NFL football. You're moving at a high pace.
What planet are we playing on here where you come out and say that afterwards too, where you're like, yeah, I could have, but chose not to.
I mean, the better answer would have been, it was a lack of focus. I thought he was going out of bounds earlier. I thought instead he was like, I could have tackled him, but I decided not to. You're like, that wasn't the best answer. Like any other answer you could have given may have been better than like, I could have done it, but I didn't. And I think that's what frustrates everyone is like, no, we saw it. Like you could have grabbed him and you were an arm's length away. So Adam, the tough part is Deonte Banks has a very difficult task. Deonte Banks is trying to go up against number one type wide receivers for the opposing team. He's got to go up against the A.J. Browns. He's got to go up against the Justin Jeffersons. He's got to go up against the CeeDee Lambs, who are three of the top 7 wide receivers, 8 wide receivers in the NFL.
Sure.
He's getting beat. And the problem is the Giants don't have another cornerback on their roster to be able to relieve pressure from Deonte Banks being that number one cornerback. So it's almost like because there's no one else to help him and we know he's not there yet and is sending to be a number one, the Giants are trotting him out there because they have no one else, and it's looking worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, on the one hand, you can say that the secondary is bad and it makes it easier for other teams and harder for Deonte Banks. The other way to look at that would be, other teams aren't shy at all from going after and targeting Deonte Banks, when you could easily, in theory, look at other matchups and say, we can win this one here. We've seen actually Adoree Jackson play decent, right, as a veteran corner. We saw Flock come and go. He's had ups and downs. That's what we expected. Drew Phillips, the rookie, out with injuries, comes back. He's giving you some good sample size. But by and large, this is not a good secondary. And yet opposing teams are like, nah, I'll just go to my number one. They got Banks on him. That's okay. We'll just go to our number one. It's almost like teams are coming out and saying, like, because we don't respect anything that's going on in your secondary, we can go ahead and just serve our number one wide receivers who want that ball, want to make the big plays, and want to put up those highlight catches. So it's just difficult for me right now. I think it'll be fascinating to watch Deonte Banks over the rest of this season because we're talking about a player that now falls into a growing basket of draft picks for the GM right now. I was about to say Sean Marks, but I'm going to go ahead and go with Joe Schoen on this one. And you say, are they hits or misses? Now, some players we always know this, 2 and 3 years, it changes it. But the reality right now is we keep adding more guys into the question pot than into the answer pot. So it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds for him over the remainder of the year, especially if the Giants start to make other trade decisions. Obviously, he's not going anywhere. The spotlight's going to remain big on him all season.
I think, Adam, the one key thing, and I heard someone mention this, and I was like, that's really interesting. I wish I remembered where I heard it. But someone had come out and said, Deonte Banks isn't yet who he thinks he is. And that's a big statement to make where it's like, he's not a number one that can shut down big cornerbacks. He's not someone that can take plays off and still impact the game with turnovers and interceptions. He is not that guy yet. But if he thinks that it's okay to make these decisions in the middle of the game, maybe he is not the guy that he thinks he actually is.
Hey, when you get drafted high, you should have the confidence. You just got to back it up with the play on the field. Something to watch, obviously, is guess who waits? George Pickens against the Pittsburgh Steelers this week, and it only continues to grow from there. Every team has those big matchups to throw at your best. Let's see if Banks can bounce back. All right, before we get out the door here, obviously midweek, want to make sure that we make mention of where the line stands ahead of that Monday night tilt with the Pittsburgh Steelers for the New York Football Giants. You get over there, we take a look real quick. It is, man, boy, a seismic over-under at 36.5 right now. New York Football Giants are getting 6.5 on the road. Not surprising that they're going to be getting points. You got Russell Wilson back there. You see George Pickens kind of come to life for the first time this season after expressing some frustrations over the course of having Justin Fields under center. So, and then you combine it with the defense and with TJ Watt and where the offensive line is for the New York Football Giants, there really isn't a reason to think that it's going to be a game that the Giants should be anything closer than basically a touchdown dog, especially going on the road, by the way, too. Like, there's some games that you look at, I think, certainly, and you would say, well, do we really worry about where things stand for the home versus away advantage? For example, if you're the Eagles and you come to Giants Stadium, do you care that you're on the road? Of course not, right? Giants are 0-4 at home. The crowd, understandably, is checking out of these games more often than not. So the reality being here that a game, by the way, that opened up at the Giants plus 5.5 and then has seen some movement, as we say, ultimately landing right now at 6.5. But has seen it drop all the way through. Went to 6, bounced up to 6.5, settled back down a little bit as well. So we'll see if it actually pushes. I wouldn't be shocked if this one ends up going up to 7 or 7.5 potentially, simply because it's one of those games where everything for the Giants seems to be going the wrong way. And there's such a swell of what's working for the Pittsburgh Steelers after Mike Tomlin makes one of those gutsy calls. We're switching up our quarterback. We've been winning football games, but we're going to the guy that on paper we were going to have as the starter when the season began. So that's just where the line stands. Already seen a point movement since it opened. We'll find out, especially after another handful of days here as we talk on a Wednesday. Again, won't be shocked if we see more movement on this before we get all the way to Monday night. We'll go ahead and check back in on Friday with where it stands. We'll have our game predictions, previews, and everything else in between. Be sure to get us on YouTube. Get over to that podcast feed and support us if you dare. And a reminder, technical difficulties on our instant game reaction coming out of last week. I popped my top a little bit, so feel free to go check that out. It'll be back on the feed along with all the other discussions that we've been having throughout this week. But until next time, until the best times, as Andrew Makowitz would want, need, and nay, demand the people know. As always, let's go Big Blue.